Crystal Palace 3, Aston Villa 0. Started with that incredible tifo from the Palace fans. Did you see it? Of that iconic
Beautiful.
picture of the kid with the Andros Townsend shirt?
Yeah.
It's such a great photo. Turned it into the tifo with the take my hand, take my whole life too. Just looked incredible. I think there's a lot of virgins online who give the Homesdale end a lot of stick for wanting to be European ultras, but
Yes,
they generate some of the best atmosphere in the Premier League. I think Selhurst Park has one of the best atmospheres in the Premier League, and seeing them do that at Wembley, they managed to sneak in the pyros. Fair play. Not sure how you got that done,
yeah.
but congratulations. And it really it felt like an occasion. It's the first time I've watched like a semi-final, cup final, whatever, where there's the fog at the beginning and you're like, fuck, this feels like a big moment. I think the Palace fans really brought it from the very beginning, right?
Absolutely. They really went there trying to create a moment, right? So they knew these kind of appearances at Wembley don't happen very often. And on top of it, it was a semi-final of an FA Cup. Like, that is something that's very rare for Crystal Palace to kind of enjoy, right? And the fact that they still brought that kind of atmosphere, as you alluded to, was absolutely incredible. And you're right, because it actually felt like it was a different type of game. You know, I think everyone kind of favoured Villa before a ball was kicked off, but we were all aware of like the credentials of this Crystal Palace side, and boy, did they bring it on the day. Absolutely incredibly well drilled, but they were so fluid with their football as well. They knew on the counter what they had to do, just get the ball to Eze or Ismail Assar, and they really took it to Villa. I mean, Villa really struggled, and it was probably the most spineless or, you know, really strange from a Villa perspective in terms of how placid they were. Placid was the key word here, because they just didn't offer that same intensity that they've offered in previous weeks. You know, even if you look at that Champions League match against PSG, where they almost brought it back at Villa Park, you know, we just didn't see any of that in this particular match. And it was strange to see. I don't know if Emery got the picks right in terms of the midfield. There's a lot wrong with this performance from a Villa perspective, but full of credit to Crystal Palace, because they really did deserve it. And, you know, even towards the end of the game, they were still fighting, Rory. They were still, despite the fact that they were always or already in the cruise control in that respect, they really did almost feel like they were going to go and get another goal. Every moment, it just felt like we're fighting because we want another goal in this game. And yeah, fair play to them. So well drilled by Glasner, and this team is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I think it's with, like, I'm going to talk about Palace obviously, but with Emery, I feel like Aston Villa, they lost 4-1 to Palace earlier in the season. I feel like they didn't learn any lessons, and they just went exactly with the same approach and just got torn apart again.
Yeah.
I feel like that, as an Arsenal fan, I went through the 18-19 season under Emery, where we bottled Europe, the Cup, and top four in a week. And I feel like he might be repeating history there a little bit. I watched that performance and I was like, I've seen this so many times with Arsenal. It just felt like a classic Emery performance, where sometimes nothing works, everything is just so passive, you're wide open, and you're just thinking, why is this not happening like last week? Why can't you get the same thing again? So I feel like Villa just had a terrible day at the office. Nothing went right. They were atrocious. But they were made atrocious by Palace not giving them a single second on the ball at any opportunity. I think it's summed up, and again, not without, but like you said, like, they pushed for the third goal. They didn't need a third goal, right? But Eddie Nketiah decides, I'm going to just chase you down. I'm going to take this ball off you and get that third goal. And it's his determination that sets up the third goal, that kills the game off, that gives them that moment again. But I think that moment just summarised everything that Glasner is getting out of this team. Now, obviously, they're in a position where they are fully able to focus on the league, on the cup, right? Yeah. But before that, they drew 2-2 at the Emirates, and they caused us all sorts of problems. I thought they were going to beat us. Like, it's not like they're just handing in the towel in the league, but he's clearly got so much of a spirit out of these players, and they're using their quality to such a ridiculous degree. I think the players I enjoyed the most, and I've really wanted him to do well since he come into the league. And I finally, you know what I'm going to say?
I know who you're going to say.
I'm finally excited to see an unbelievable performance from him. But Daichi Kamada was fucking unbelievable. I could not believe how good he was. Like, not only winning the ball back, but the balls that he was putting into the box, floating the through balls. Between him and Wharton, like, obviously Wharton got all the headlines, and we can talk about him as well.
Yeah.
But I wanted to talk about Kamada because Wharton is English and he'll get talked about. But I thought Kamada alongside him was just unbelievable. And that midfield too, Tielemans and Kamara could get nowhere near it.
No, and that's true. Kamada was displaying the kind of football that we associated to him at Lazio and before that Frankfurt. You know, these were the performances that we knew is within him, right? And I think he struggled to adapt to the Premier League. It's fair to say this season, but you're right to call out that performance. That's absolutely brilliant. I think a lot of Crystal Palace fans actually said Kamada had an incredible game for them. But yeah, you could have picked a lot of those Crystal Palace players for game of their lives, you know, in that respect. Munoz on that right-hand side.
He never stopped.
Constant running, constant threat. Wharton, as you alluded to, he will get the plaudits, but rightly so as well. He looks like he was in control of the ball, and any moments that kind of Aston Villa threatened, he kind of got his foot into it and broke up the play, you know. But yeah, I mean, even defensively, from a backline perspective, when they were put under pressure, Rory, it felt like they were in control. Lacroix, Guehi, you know, they just didn't look like they were going to falter. And I think there was one or two situations that even Henderson had to deal with from
made some good
goalkeeping
saves.
perspective, and he had to pull them off as well. So again, it was a whole team performance here. And Mateta, love that guy. Love that guy.
Like, honestly, his running power is unbelievable. When he's got the ball at his feet, it feels like, I can't remember who the foot, but I think it was someone who described R9, and this is a very kind of kind comparison. But
don't know where this is going.
I know, but when he runs, it's like a herd of bison running.
Yeah.
But Mateta has that same power in his legs. Where when he's running at full pace, defenders just fall off him. They just cannot keep up with him or get hold of him. He's just like a freight train straight through. And he's not someone that looks like naturally he'd be able to run, but he just goes, and you see the whole team go with him. And like with Sarr as well, with the sheer pace that he's got, we remember him from when he was at Watford as well. Unbelievable player, great finisher, like 2 goals here, 2 great finishes as well, especially the first goal, unbelievable finish. But just the sheer pace they get forward with. And I think it's what I wanted Glasner to do at Palace. This is what I wanted to see. I remember his Frankfurt team, and I was like, I remember us talking at the beginning of the year when Palace were really struggling. They got a terrible start to the year. I was like, just don't sack him. Please don't sack him. Please don't sack him. Like, you have to stick with him. And this is what they've shown, that patience works. And now we'll see if they start poorly next year. Maybe it's a Glasner thing that they start things slowly. But they're coming into this with a lot of momentum again. It's a team that suddenly is a lot more attractive to play for, right? Maybe they can bring in more players. So it's a really exciting place to be at the moment. I hope that this performance isn't the best performance they have in this competition, because they're going to need a better performance against Man City. But it's encouraging that they did go 2-0 up at the Etihad recently. I think Glasner might have or will have learned some lessons from that and how they can manage that a little bit better. Remember, in that game, they were a slight offside from being 3-0 up, at which point I think they probably win the game. So I think Glasner would have earned some or learned some lessons there, hopefully. But we've got this far, and we haven't even talked about Eberechi Eze and his unbelievable goal. The levels to which I want this man at Arsenal. What a player. And he's had a few moments now in the last couple of weeks where he's just scoring bangers, and the composure and everything he's showing, you're just seeing how special a player he is.
We knew how special he was. Absolutely incredible talent, but that goal kind of almost showed, I don't want to say it's a maturity, because we know he's quite mature, right? But it's more, he's elevated himself to show that he can do it on the big moments now. And it's just like, I'm clinging on to that factor of, I want to see more of that. I want to see more of those moments. And you don't want him to leave necessarily Crystal Palace, but it feels like there will be a club that will come in for him. There will be. I'll be surprised if there isn't, Rory. To be honest,
Just don't go Spurs, Eze. Please, just don't go
no,
Spurs. Just don't go Spurs.
I don't think it will go. I think he will aspire that it's got to be a certain level of a club. Like, the one worry that I'd have, Rory, is that could a club outside of the Premier League grab him? Because that for me, I think Eze is a special kind of talent. It's one of those that I love to show my little boy. This is how he can play, right? And it's just like you've talked about how he glides, for example, and just the elegance about the way he plays.
It's beautiful to watch.
We don't have that necessarily in the Premier League. We don't have. He's a rare kind of talent, and I'm glad I saw him at an early age. But this guy is just. I feel like there is still something about him. Yeah. There's still something that if he gets onto a certain stage, and I'm hoping maybe from an England perspective, we see that. That is what I think England fans are craving. If we can get that kind of ability out of him. And it feels like, I don't know about you, but maybe there's a bit of Glasner's added to his bit of game, because I think there's moments where before he would have been just standing off a bit more and not fighting for the ball as much. Not that he didn't do that in his early days under even Gareth Ainsworth when he was on loan at Wickham, but there is a bit more of that kind of coming into the kind of team in terms of the midfield and picking up the ball and driving with it. I think there's a little bit more of that in his game now, and I'd love to see that kind of develop over time. So let's hope that Palace can get into Europe now. That is the key. Well, win the FA Cup now.
Absolutely. I think the whole world is behind Palace at this point. I just have to say, with the goal, I really love that both his feet come off the ground. Like, he hits it so hard that both his feet end up in the air. Like, he just absolutely wellies it. Like, it's such a clean hit. And he's one of the few players in the league that makes me stand, like, he gets me out on my seat, if you know what I mean, where I'm like, every time he plays, he does something. And that goal was just ludicrous. And I'm just so happy that he had that moment. Any fans having a go at him for not celebrating, that's his celebration, man. He takes it all in, he does it. And I do love that Munoz ran up to him and screamed in his face, "Now thank God." And the first thing he did was say his prayer, which I really like. They've got a lot of religion in that team. Is taking them a very far way. I've always said my dream athlete is always going to be very religious because they keep it focused. They've got the discipline. And Munoz really gave him those instructions. I really enjoyed that. But what a goal and what a performance from Palace. Do you think they can go and do it? I think Glasner can put a game plan together. We know that City are bad on transitions or vulnerable in transitions, and they're coming up against arguably the best transition team at the moment in the league.
We'll dig into Man City, I'm sure, in a minute, but I genuinely think on the day they can definitely beat them. I think there was a comment where Glasner said about the fact of you'll see a different Palace side in a few weeks' time, and you know what? That is a confidence. That's a confidence thing. You know that Glasner's aiming for that showdown now. And I'm not surprised that with that performance, he's going to make sure that they're rallied up again. But I can see them trying to do a very similar style of football. It's just they've got to make sure that they've got the composure, not lose their heads, because I think that's the difference with Man City. They've been there, they've done it. But you're right to allude to the fact that they've got some vulnerabilities in that Man City squad. They're kind of young. There was moments in that game against Nottingham Forest where I feel on the day a better side equipped to it could have brought themselves back into the match. Crystal Palace have definitely got something about them. They can definitely be that side. So I'm hoping, Rory, that we can get a hell of a game in that final.
Just keep it tight first 10 minutes. Don't concede in the first 10 minutes, Palace. Just get through that first 10 minutes and you got a game on your hands. I